Chapter 14. The Mountain Tower. Darkness swallowed them. As her eyes adjusted, Gabriella could make out a large chamber with a high-vaulted ceiling. Doorways lined the far wall. The sound of their feet echoed off bare stone. Damien stood so close to Gabriella that his body pressed against her and made it hard for her to walk. Adamantus went ahead of them, the clopping of his hooves creating the impression that the chamber was filled with cantering horses. Dim light streamed down from skylights and cut shimmering columns into the darkness. Mortimer took a deep breath, and his exhale was a ghostly hiss that even made him recoil. "You say this place has been empty for centuries?" he asked Adamantus, "because I don't feel like we are alone." Adamantus had stopped a few feet ahead of them. Even in the dim light, Gabriella could see his body tense. He extended his nose to search the air for a scent. "That is because we are not." Gabriella moved towards Damien, but it was too late. The bolt of lightning came so suddenly it overwhelmed her, a searing hammer that flung her through the air. She knew she was flying at the wall. She knew she must have hit it, but the pain she felt throughout her body overpowered the sense of impact, even time. She could have been sprawled on the floor for minutes, hours, or days. She would have guessed weeks if she had not opened her eyes and seen her brother's face as he shook her. "Gabriella, wake up!" Adamantus stood in front of them. Mortimer was shouting, but Gabriella could not make sense of his words. His sword, still nicked from a wyvern's horns, was drawn. Damien's touch hurt her, yet she was still too weak to say so. She moved to stop him. He reached up to catch something falling from her grasp as her arms weakened. The egg, she remembered. It was still in her arms. She had lifted her arms to protect it. Then a second blast struck her. This one was not as powerful as the last. Damien instead caught the brunt of it. It had come from a different angle than the first, from another corner of the room. Enough of it still hit Gabriella that the pain returned. Her skin felt as if it had brushed the surface of the sun. Her body writhed. She could not control her arms. They shot out to her side. She was blasted up against the wall again while the egg tumbled away. She retained enough of her senses to hear the egg fall. It made a noise, almost like a tree branch breaking in the wind. A lightning-shaped crack split it from end to end. It wobbled as it rolled, rolling back and forth until it disappeared down a fissure in the floor. There was a silence, followed by a louder crack as the egg struck the bottom of the chasm it had fallen into, followed by thunder. Mortimer fell down to his knees at the noise. Adamantus buckled. Damien, still stunned himself, his clothes smoking from the heat of the last blast, was unable to move his hands to protect his ears. His face registered the full pain of the mother wyvern's roar. The mother had heard the crack of her egg, and her voice was terrible, all the worse from the effect of the echoes in the hall. The roaring mother violently threw herself against the doors. With the weight of the dragon behind it, the giant iron door budged and groaned like an off-key horn. Gabriella strained to right herself. Dust fell from the ceiling. Mortimer was paralyzed between the danger behind them and before them. Gabriella twisted onto her elbow and looked between Adamantus's legs. Sybil leaned against a column, one she must have been hiding behind before she had attacked. She was still in her soiled, ill-fitting dress. In a doorway across the room was Sybil's other self, pointing her smoking wand in Gabriella's direction with her left hand. It was too unreal. But as Gabriella's hearing returned, she could hear the wild laughter of both girls. "Thought you could escape from me, did you? Thought you could leave me there, did you? But you never realized you left me stronger than you found me. Now you will see what happens to slaves that betray us. That wyvern will make quick work of us all if we don't do something." Mortimer hollered as the mother smashed against the doors again. "Silence!" Sybil shouted. She nodded to her twin. "Libby's, see to it." Libby's, as Sybil called her, ran to the doors. The wyvern struck them again, causing one door to open wider. The whole of the dragon's face appeared in the opening. Gabriella moved to cover her brother from the inevitable fireball. Libby stood in front of the door, undeterred. She raised her wand, and a blast of lightning shot forth. The wyvern fell away with a screech. The door stood empty and smoking in her wake. The wyvern had tried to kill Gabriella and the others more than once, but the mother had also saved and protected them. Somehow, Gabriella had come to think of the wyvern as their ally. Now her vision blurred with tears as she watched the beast tumble onto the rock outcropping like a bird that has struck a window. Her cracked, broken claws gouged the stone as she tried to regain her footing. Libby showed no fear of the mother dragon. She was too confident in her powers. The mirror image of Sybil moved behind the door that had swung open. Another blast of light, this one more sustained and bluish in color, pulled the door shut. With a final flourish, a yellow stream snaked its way from the end of the wand to an iron lever, which groaned downward and fell into place behind the doors, locking them. As the mother recovered, the pounding on the doors resumed, but it was weaker now, and the iron did not budge. The only light came from the skylights above. Now that is taken care of, we may return to business, Sybil said. Mortimer interrupted her. Who are you? This is Sybil, the princess from Foyle Island. She cursed the island and destroyed the castle. She killed Gayday, Gabriella gasped, fighting for breath. Oh, are you still sad about your blue friend? Sybil mocked. Gabriella crawled to her brother's side and wrapped her arms around him. He was rocking and keening softly. There were deep gouges in his arm where he had cut himself with his own fingernails. Who is that funny-looking boy? Sybil asked. Indeed, her twin added. Why does he shake like that? Did we perhaps poach his brains? Well, I've always liked poached eggs, Sybil said. While the girls laughed, Adamantus lunged forward, his antlers lowered. Libby's was the closer of the two, and although he could not reach both of them, his intent to kill at least one was clear. Sybil cried out to warn her twin, but Libby's was doubled over by her own laughter. Libby's turned, with only enough time to widen her eyes, but the yell crumbled with a loud bellow as Mortimer leapt upon him and dug the dagger into his shoulder. Both Elk and Trapper collapsed in a heap, while Libby's rushed to her sister's side. Mortimer was quick to recover, his legs set in a wide stance, his fists raised in a fighting pose, his dagger dripped bright red blood. Mr. Creedley! Gabriella screamed. Adamantus staggered up, the blood draining from his wound while Mortimer edged closer to the princesses. So, this is how you cast your lot, the Elk said. You would kill a child. She is a monster, twisted by the Sevwar. What would Omanuju say of you, Elk? Don't you dare speak of him. He showed you kindness when no one else did. And now he is dead. See where kindness got him? You and the girl are naive. Power always wins. He nodded at the twins. They have it. You traitor! Gabriella cried. Sybil had recovered from her shock and raised the wand toward Adamantus. Wait, princess. He still has value. He is wise and knows much about the treasure we seek. Treasure? Sybil and Libby said in unison. Yes, a greater treasure than you can imagine. One that will make up for the losses of your palace. Mortimer Creedley, if you think I will cooperate, the Elk began. You will, because you and the girl need the treasure. Like I said on Vison, you and the girl are free to join me. Just remember, I am in charge. You are a traitor, Adamantus growled. Wait, I am in charge, Libby shouted. No, I am, Sybil said, shoving her twin aside. I was first. I am second in command then, Libby said. Fine, Sybil said. All the party stood staring, reassessing their alliances. Sybil finally broke the silence. Were you not with them when they came to Foyle before? She asked Mortimer. Damien and I came in a separate airship, one that piloted itself. So you brought the ship. We found it in the garden, boarded it, and it brought us here, Libby said. Mortimer nodded. The ships, they are enchanted. If it brought you here, then that means you are to join us. He made a shallow bow. So, it is to you, Mr. Creedley, that we are indebted, for as our castle crumbled, we found that floating ship. It had been damaged by falling stones, but it was still worthy of flight. We leapt into it completely in desperation, completely ignorant of where it was taking us, and it took us into dangerous places, islands full of smoke and dragons, which were terribly dangerous. Libby piped. This time, Sybil did not laugh and rather rolled her eyes. Indeed, how terrible it must have been for you, Mortimer said. How did you make it through alive? Sybil straightened. Libby copied her down to her expression. Why, with these, a few blasts from our wands and the dragons were running scared. Mortimer's eyes fixed on the wands for a long while. You must be skilled mages. We are, they answered in unison, giggling. Once on the ship, all we wanted was revenge upon Gabriella, said Libby. The ship must have sensed our need and brought us to this place. When we saw you approach, we could not believe our good fortune. It seemed like forever while we waited for you to come through the door so we could attack, Sybil added. And a well-executed attack it was. Mortimer made another bow. He stepped closer to where Gabriella and Damien huddled. I have a proposal for you. I will split the treasure with you, 2/3 for you, 1/3 for myself. We can help each other, using both the Elawn and the Tantalon to carry the gold back. The Tantalon, as you call it, is finished, Libby said. Shortly after it reached its destination, it split in two. The damage it had sustained on our home island, the wear and tear of the winds, not to mention the dragons we encountered, were too much for it. No matter, said Mortimer. I am happy to see we have already helped each other and may continue to do so. I brought you the Tantalon. I brought you Gabriella. And with Gabriella, I bring you the map to the labyrinth protecting the treasure. I brought you her brother, too, someone else to torture. Finally, I have brought you our ship, so you may leave this place. Gabriella held her brother tighter. Her mind was a maze of confusion. Had even Gade's companion, Brigitte, betrayed them by bringing the sisters there? Was everything she had taken for purpose a pattern she had imposed? The sanction of the gods, the will of the dead, the aid of Gade and his kind. Nothing made sense anymore. The door shook and banged again, with a renewed attack from the wyvern. This time, the iron moaned and bent inward, as if a giant were smashing his fist against the outside. Dust fell from the ceiling to the floor with a hiss. Flames crackled against the iron as the wyvern breathed fire from the outside. The metal shrieked with loud popping noises as it expanded from the heat. Well, let us not wait any longer, Sybil commanded. Let's go treasure hunting.